Hey folks, welcome back to Game Garbage, where we take a look at games, chat about the gaming news in the industry, and of course, stream for fun. Today we're going over a state of gaming. We haven't had one for a while, but I do want to talk about this because I just feel like the industry is just slowly getting worse on this particular subject of the dopamine hit. And they're not just chasing the trend of things, they're really just chasing every possible way to try to maximize the money that they can get out of players and maximizing just extruding everything they can from everyone they can, and it's really just kind of destroying the gaming industry as an art form and just making games as something just to get into your wallet instead of an actual like artistic experience to make you feel emotion and stuff. And so yeah, I want to talk about this. We'll go over a few articles and then we'll go over some examples. But yeah, how live service games keep players engaged. So this is an article of just kind of how live service is. And live service we've had for quite some time. Um, the first example I really remember is, and it's kind of evolved over time too, but we're not going to talk too much about that. But like the first one I really remember was Team Fortress 2 when they worked on making it basically free. And it what they started with was like hats that you could buy for like $1 or maybe up to like $3 or $5. And then they had so many sales of those cosmetics on your character while you were playing that they just made Team Fortress 2 free. Valve did. And they were the ones that kind of like kicked that off. And again, that was back in 2000s, I believe, and or 2010s when the game has been out for a while. And then it's a big one that we had was Rainbow Six Siege. After that was Overwatch 1. And then the year after that was Fortnite. And that really just like kicked off some craziness because Fortnite made $1 billion on its 1 year anniversary, which is kind of nuts. And so far they've made over $40 billion. But yeah, talking about this live service, basically the live service model and an approach built around continuous updates, seasonal events, and long-term player engagement. Most of us all know that are watching this video. Developers are increasingly designed designing ecosystems that evolve over time. Regular content upgrades, battle passes, limited time challenges, and special rewards have become core mechanics that keep communities active months or even years after release. Probably one of the best ones that we got to see was Destiny. While they had DLCs or expansions, they also started introducing a lot of kind of like cosmetics and more passes and the Eververse store and all of this kind of stuff. And I really feel like that ultimately made things worse and really just kind of killed the game because, again, like with almost every single live service, it's all about what more they can sell you instead of actually creating a game that you're emotionally attached to. And you're just getting this dopamine hit for everything that you're getting. But we're going to get into that in just a second. And yeah, instead of offering everything up front, live service titles create a steady flow of unlockable and progression milestones. Players return not only for gameplay itself, but also for the season of advancement and possibility of earning exclusive items. And I would say that would be the big reason why players come back. It's not really about the game. Maybe they just want to sit like and play Call of Duty or something and kind of like just play something after work for a little bit. But I would say a lot of players actually go for the loot itself, just to say, oh, look what I got. And, a really good example of this, again, is Valve with Counter-Strike Go, where you can get certain skins and you can actually sell those skins on their store, and you and Valve get a piece of the resulting sale, right? And the idea, even though these are not real items, they're digital only. um, if they're not as common, they can go up in value because more people are willing to pay for that type of rarity, but again, they're just digital items. And live service again has evolved over periods of time, but like it's really kind of gotten insane with the cost of the cosmetics now, because yeah, some of those cosmetics I think in Counter Strike Go are can be like hundreds of thousands or even millions of US dollars. Reward systems, too, are one of the most important pillars of live service design. Developers carefully balance different types of incentives to appeal to both casual and dedicated players. Again, this live service is also not just trying to find a niche audience, maybe like some games do, okay, like extraction shooters. That's a very kind of niche, hardcore type of game for players. But two, the idea with this live service is generally to broaden the audience as far as you can. So creating new game modes, creating new incentives, new stuff to grind for, and again, going for that dopamine hit. And so we have daily quests, weekly challenges, seasonal leaderboards, and cosmetic rewards all contribute to a layer of progression. And again, the live service game is more focused on the progression structure than actually what the game is. This is what I talked about with Battlefield 6. While I liked Battlefield 6, I liked the maps, I liked the gunplay for the most part, and I liked some of the variability that we had. The game and the gear became more about the grind, which was insane. Some of the grinding stuff was kind of insane unless you really played a ton. It really wasn't as much for casual players. And then the two battle passes that we had. And again, my biggest concern was this is EA. Okay, they had a wonderful franchise that they rebooted, which was Star Wars Battlefront, and they boogered it up big time with the loot box system. And in fact, that was such a big deal that even some countries banned loot boxes like the Netherlands. And so, yeah, your game in the Netherlands cannot have a loot box system because they see it as a form of gambling. And again, it was so bad that really kicked off with EA. And so EA has that reputation when they also with Madden and Football Club and all of these others that they basically live service everything that they can. And they don't want to support games like the Dead Space remake because 3 million copies isn't enough, which I think is kind of insane. And again, if they worked on long-term type of stuff, that would be great. But again, they're trend chasing the money as fast as they can and to trying to maximize that profit. And this is going to come into play later as we continue to talk about this. But yeah, there is another problem. Again, with Battlefield 6, it was great. I think the devs worked really hard. We had Battlefield Labs, which is 4 big studios, and now they've all had layoffs because, again, the game is not performing enough. We know the game was roughly 490 million US dollars for a budget just to build the game and get it to launch. And then there's a lot of post-launch stuff too. But again, there's not enough of a player base, which we're going to go over and to really warrant the size of all of those studios. So they're all getting some cuts and some layoffs. And that's incredibly frustrating because I think the game is fairly good. But again, there's a lot of catering in the Battlefield game itself to make it more like COD, to make it more action and fast paced, and not really make it a Battlefield game, but make it a game that is for the masses with some stuff that's already popular and trend chasing the crap out of it. And then again, as soon as that live service came out, man, I was freaking done, and so was a lot of other players. And then in the coming weeks, we saw that the game was basically over, which was kind of nuts. And so, yeah, this whole live service thing, it does not benefit the player, it benefits the company. And here we're going to get into another article here. And again, I think this is so important to talk about, not just for players that are in their 20s or 30s or whatever, but too just for people to understand that you're not necessarily in control like you think you are because they're getting you chemically in your brain to get you to actually spend that money. And then the thing that I think is worse too, being a dad, is that I have, my kids that I want them to be able to play games and have fun with them, but I also don't want them to play these dopamine hitting live service games. Now they will when they are older, okay, and I will walk with them through that. And but like, you feel like you want to play these games, but you're not having fun. Or two, there's a lot of things that do happen in the game, but you don't really remember what's going on, or like you don't have any memory of really what you did. You see the achievement maybe, but like you don't actually have a memory of that, or you don't know the story. You can't remember characters' names, but you remember the skin that you got, or the item that you worked for, or the bundle that you paid for, or whatever. And it's not about the game. The game itself is the illusion. It's all about the storefront for the live service. And people are really starting to reject this now. And that's why a lot of these games, I think Marathon included, while it's not the only factor, it is contributing to it, of why some of these games are failing. And again, with these big, massive budgets, well, it's putting the studio at risk, or other things are having to be canceled or closed, and it's just causing a mess. So yeah, I'm not gonna like read this entire article, but yeah, the loot boxes and gotcha mechanics, and it was a virtual wheel of fortune. And there's one thing in here specifically that I want to read. Even with some of the drops being 0.1%, and this is what got Star Wars Battlefront 2 in trouble with EA, of just like, and some others too, of just making it so unlikely. I also think of like Rainbow Six Siege. So unlikely. I remember watching some ordinary gamer spending 100,000 points that he had accrued, and he barely got anything that he ever wanted, right? And it's gotten so bad that we've even now taken, like, if you lose, quote unquote, so many times, you just get some kind of like helper out RNG or no, random numbers generator stuff to actually get you something, or kind of a guarantee if you've spent enough at this point so that you can actually get the item that you're going for. And I just really think it's pretty disgusting. Also, the psychology of rewards, variable reinforcement. And so, yeah, the idea, Skinner, he demonstrated that so-called variable reinforcement, where rewards are delivered on an unpredictable schedule, forms the strongest and most persistent habits. Like gambling. Gambling has already been that. We've already been utilizing that in the gambling space for a long time. But yeah, this is in our games now. And if a new player that is sort of character that they wanted would drop from exactly the 10th chest, that process would become a boring routine. But since the reward can drop on the first try or the 100th, the player is constantly in a state of emotional tension. See, they're not playing these games necessarily to really enjoy the game. I think that's part of the hook initially. But again, it's an emotional attachment to this gambling of like, oh, I might get it, I might get it, I might get it. And it's an addiction, guys. It's horrible. And then again, we're subjecting this to children. And as being a dad, it's like, this is just not okay, not acceptable. And we even got to bring up Balatro. While they're technically is the game is based off of mechanics, and it might have some of those kind of similar mechanics. It's definitely not really a catered gambling game, okay, like Final Fantasy, or like Football Club, excuse me, or like Madden, or like Fortnite, or like some of these other games with loot boxes and stuff, and other battle passes and whatever, like Warzone. And Balatro had to have a higher rating, which, he got overturned for his game, or at least lessened, but still it affected his sales, right? But then we have these big, massive AAA publishing companies that make these games with these gambling mechanics, even far exceeding Balatro or some of these other indie titles. And they are, again, just trying to get as much money as they can. Again, it's not benefiting the player; it's getting as much as they can. And then the result of that is now you have a child, a minor, that is now addicted, that is learning and engaging those behaviors, is even reprogramming the brain to kind of get used to this. And then, yeah, your draw to play, your draw to spend, you don't really know why, but it's there because you've been programmed that way. It's really disgusting. And then, yeah, they're finding out that the unpredictable schedule, again, forming the strongest and most persistent habits. You can't stop. And then part of the thing, too, that I want to mention about this is that since we've had Rainbow Six Siege 2015, okay, we're in 2026. Now we're in roughly 11 years, okay, of these live service trendy games with these type of dopamine hitting mechanics in the game. And while there's been more of them, or more creative, or some changes or adjustments or whatever, they're still existing. But now we're building an entire generation that doesn't know what satisfaction feels like in a video game, to a degree. And we're also at a point where maybe we're even having a generation now that's building up a resistance. Like, people know what's happening, people know how they're getting screwed and scammed, because live service was not necessarily the cosmetics or the season or battle pass type of stuff. Okay, it was more about actually getting a content pack, a DLC of maps and guns and vehicles and whatever else, or even getting story. Well, then they scrapped all of that and replaced it with a whole bunch of skins that I never appreciated or really enjoyed. But again, I had built up the idea that, like, utility for a game is better, that story is better, but it captured a lot of kids, unfortunately. And I feel like this is how Call of Duty got off of its rock and totally went a different direction. Again, catered toward the kids because they're more susceptible. And yeah, the younger the person, the better. And so even though it's still a rated M game, it's like, yeah, we'll let our parents, the parents can buy it, of course, right? We can work around that. But yeah, they literally built the mechanics in Call of Duty to cater to the players' habits and buying, basically, and focusing on that dopamine hit to get them going. Also, too, the illusion of virtual currencies. Most of us already probably knew this, but yeah, it's basically a loss of control of spending because, again, you really have no idea how much you're really spending. You're just spending stuff. And then, too, the game also gives you some small bonuses, or maybe you want to buy something specifically, but you can't actually put in the amount that you want in the store. You always have to buy a bundle that's more than what you need to actually buy that item. And then you have some more sitting there off to the side that's reminding you every time you're logging in. And then it's like, well, something else comes along, I'll buy another bundle so that I can kind of try to zero it out, which ultimately never happens. And again, that's how they're trying to get you. So it's freaking awful. Also, too, just the focus of the skins. Again, we talked about the Counter-Strike skin betting already, or like these actually having value, or players too, like Counter-Strike Go being able to get a piece of the pie. This was also with Diablo 3, and there's been some other games where, again, you as a player can actually make some money off of the game. And I think that's really the only reason why Counter-Strike Go is actually still going is because of that. But yeah, some of the key elements that are connected with live service games with gambling, the near miss effect. The in-game roulette animation often shows the arrow literally missing the most valuable prize by a millimeter and landing on a cheaper item, which again, this is an illusion. This is not necessary, and this is all on purpose too. This tricks the brain into believing that success was incredibly close, which it's all predetermined beforehand, stimulating the next attempt. Again, that missing out are also the artificial scarcity and FOMO, which again is just digital stuff anyway. I think of Bored Ape and NFTs and how that all failed, which I think is wonderful. And yeah, live service, honestly, I think needs to be next, at least the current form that it's in. Also, stores in game as a service are updated daily or weekly. There's unique skins are sold for a limited time, triggering a fear of missing out and encouraging impulse purchases. Also, the daily login bonuses, a mechanic that encourages player to open the app every day. Excuse me, creating a strong habit of interacting with the interface. And again, trying to as many times as they can, you're more likely to buy or you're more likely to see something that you're interested in and actually buy. Again, the entire design of the live service game, again, is not to benefit you, and it's not about the game. It's about you and your wallet and trying to get you separated from it. Hidden probabilities. The guaranteer system where the odds of landing a rare item increase after a series of losing streaks. And this did not used to be the case. It wasn't until people really started kind of digging into some of this stuff. There were some lawsuits, some suing, and even governments started getting involved again. I think Star Wars Battlefront 2 in 2017 or 18, whenever that was actually a pretty big one that really started kind of getting noticed because it was EA. And then, yeah, enticing the player to continue spending money to spin the roulette wheel with a 100% chance of success. So, like, eventually, right, you would get there. But there was also some lawsuits, too. I can't remember the game specifically, but there was one specifically where they're like, hey, you could get this. And actually, the probability of getting it was zero. So, that's fraud. They were lying to you. But again, their fine that they got was minimal compared to the amount of money that they made. And I always think that for fraudulent behavior, you should hand over all of the money that you earned during the fraud. All of it. Everything. And then I think you should still get a fine on top of that. So make it so egregious that just companies don't do it. Because, yeah, if they can really just, do something horrible and dirty and only have to pay a little bit as a percentage, well, then they'll just continue doing that, right? It's actually not a penalty. It's a slap on the hand. You caught me, whatever. And then they'll just keep doing it. Also, VIP systems and loyalty levels. The more money a user spends in the game, the higher their status, which grants exclusive avatar frames, titles, and small cashbacks with virtual currency, etc. And so, yeah, this is really getting awful. And some of the examples that I want to share is, of course, Marathon. Now, Marathon, again, is an extraction shooter, but it is built as a live service game. And while I think some of the maps from what I was reading and also watching some videos and streams and stuff is that, yeah, they really cooked pretty hard and actually did some pretty good jobs with some maps, but that kind of needed to be at the beginning. But again, people are just starting to, again, hate live service. Now, some games, not all of the live service games fail, but again, they're really kind of built as a game first, immersive first, engaging the player in the game first, and then the story is kind of an afterthought. Um, or it's not as heavy necessarily. But again, Marathon, we got a first look at the Battle Pass, and it is one of the most expensive and most egregious ones we've ever seen in a video game, which is kind of insane. There's duplicates, there's not really much there to begin with, and then the cost of it on top of that. And yeah, here we are. Marathon is just, it's on its way out after a little over a month, which is not good for Bungie. When we take a look at Arc Raiders, again, this was a game that players really appreciated. We had a pretty good bump, which is not usually very common. And then it kind of went down a little bit. And then we had another bump again, and now it's been trailing off ever since. And I think people are moving on to other stuff, or there's just things that are more exciting. Because, yeah, in here we had Requiem, we've had Crimson Desert now, there's also been Marathon. And so, but again, they made their money, right? They got a ton of players. They're still having a pretty good amount of players show up. But again, in 4 months, that's a pretty quick drop off. Because I want to say this was October. So yeah, November, December, January, February, March. So basically 5 months, the game is kind of on its way out at this point. But again, Marathon is in its first month, and like that's not good. Also, Battlefield. This was another example that I had. Boy, I was very passionate about this. I love Battlefield. Really, really good start. Huge, right? It was going to be the COD killer and all of that stuff. But again, people really started, I think, seeing the writing on the wall pretty quick. We had Season 1. A lot of people came back. We basically had people show up for a little less than a week, and then they were done. And after that, it was on its way out, and it's been on its way out. This game, too, has almost chronically been on sale almost every single week it's existed since launch. Even before that, there was a pre-order bonus, which I took, which was 10% off. So I spent $63, and then I used like another 10 for Microsoft money. So like that was $53. So I feel like I got a fairly good deal. But again, as soon as the season came out and I saw what they were doing, I saw the push of the maps, the smaller maps. And again, it was not really about the battlefield mechanics and the teams and stuff. It was more about just getting you to play, to have the faster action, tighter spaces. It didn't feel like really Battlefield at all, in my opinion. And again, it's still good for what it is, but it's just severely marred, even in its design, in my opinion, of just Battlefield. The campaign, freaking garbage. Really hated that campaign the more I played. And again, the main focus was of, the multiplayer, not as many maps, bigger push towards smaller maps. Just it turned into a COD trend chasing thing again to maximize the spending, the 2 battle passes that we had, and all of this other stuff, and the grindiness of the gear and etc. It was just, my word, man. It was just, and then the bugs on top of that. It's just, yeah, nothing was just really done. So yeah, in a month, this game was dying. Very, very quick. We have other examples too, where Crimson Desert, there's no live service in this game whatsoever. And again, I think people enjoyed that. But again, this is built on a satisfaction, which takes time. Dopamine is instantaneous, but satisfaction is built over time with the game as you get to explore, as you get to experience it, digging into the story, getting into the gameplay, seeing the map, seeing the devs doing stuff. And then Pearl Abyss, they're also bolstering their own reputation by getting out there and getting the patches done, fixing things, getting bugs fixed, performance issues, all of this kind of stuff. And also like making the game a little bit less MMO, if you know what I mean, because that was what their first game was. So yeah, it's very heavy MMO anyway, with what we would kind of expect as MMO players. But like, yeah, they definitely got in there and started fixing stuff. And so, yeah, we actually beat our peak, our launch. We beat our launch, and then we beat it again. It's impressive. And still, there's still a pretty healthy amount. Now, players are dropping off pretty quickly because, yeah, the game is just so big. But again, they made their money. Okay, they got over 4 million copies sold. And the player review scores are definitely still going up. We're at an 8.8 now on Metacritic for our user reviews. There's over almost 12,000 reviews just on the PC side of Metacritic. And yeah, that's insane. And then we even look at this again. This has been going up too. This was in, I think, in the high 60s. Now we're in the low 72. It's almost actually what Marathon is at. And yeah, 118,000 reviews on Steam. It's nuts. And again, we used to have games like this pretty common, where like you had to kind of take time to learn about the game, you had to take time to learn about the story to get into the gameplay, and then you had some of those like wow moments or really fun, engaging moments. And again, the game was about the game; it wasn't about the store. I got to talk about this too with Kingdom Come Deliverance, which is another one. Now, I don't think overall the marketing was done super well on what this type of game was going to be. I think a lot of people bought it, and then it's just like, whoa, this is like a super. This has like MMO type of mechanics in it, right? Like Crimson Desert does, and has that same kind of feel where it's almost more like a simulation. Um, but again, that's not for everybody. But yeah, we had some players. They came back. I mean, we beat it there, beat it there, beat it again. That's kind of crazy, and it's been on a much slower, steady decline. But yeah, we're still having almost 20,000 people show up yesterday. Just kind of nuts. Resident Evil, we had launched, and then Saturday, we even had more players showing up, but the game does not take very long. But this even has a slower fall off. This is what kind of shocks me. This has what looks like a bit of a slower fall off, and we see people getting to the weekend on Saturday and Sunday. But yeah, there's talking to Dexter, who's been on the channel before, for those of you that have been around for a bit, talking about how, yeah, the game is really just amazing. It's a game, it's really built for the player. It's a wonderful experience. It's exactly what you would kind of expect. He was like, yeah, it's basically like a 9 out of 10, a 10 out of 10. And he's like, it's perfect. It's so good. And yeah, they definitely got their money back. We also take a look at Slay the Spire. This has also been roughly out for about a month. And again, we're having pretty good consistent player counts. We had people show up, and again, it just exploded. It got really big really quick. We almost beat the launch. Well, we definitely beat the launch, right? But we almost beat our peak right there. And then, yeah, started curtailing off. And even though this is a live service game, it's still built and designed as a game first, with the store as kind of more of an afterthought. And that's appreciated. And the players appreciate that too. Just look at this. This is crazy. And then when we take a look, we're still hitting pretty high numbers. The troughs are still pretty high numbers, and players are still enjoying it and playing it. And then, yeah, the peaks are over 300,000 still. And so, yeah, you're maintaining a little over half of your player base for the peaks, for like your highest peak that you had, and that's good. That's healthy. They definitely made their money too. Take a look at Helldivers. This is another example. People really enjoyed it for that first month. Again, a crazy launch. This was a game that PlayStation was not expecting, but again, they were out of the way. The devs could actually make their game, and well, here we are. And then we had that fall off right after a month. It fell off pretty deeply, but whenever there was something kind of big happening in the world, players came back. And they came back pretty much every single time, almost hitting around 200,000 players. And again, the amount of money that they've made, the amount of copies that they've sold, this has been over 20 million copies, I think. Maybe we're getting close to 25 million now. So yeah, they've definitely made their money at $40 a pop. And yeah, they will continue to be making their money. But yeah, players actually come back for games like Godslayer and Babylon's Fall and Concord and Marathon or Redfall. Like, players are at a point now where I think they can tell if what the game is going to be just by looking at the trailer. And this is why people are not excited for Horizon Hunters Gathering or some other games, or like why so many players could see what High Guard was. And maybe you enjoyed it, maybe I didn't, but again, that's not the point, because the masses will decide. And if your budget is hundreds of thousands of dollars, okay, as a live service game, I just don't think that's going to work anymore. The writing should be on the wall since Concord. It was not necessarily a bad game. I think the character designs were puke awful. But again, the gunplay and that stuff was okay. But then again, we also get to take a look at, Fragpunk, a free-to-play game. Again, the game is still out, but just quick fall off, just boom, in the freaking dumpster. In a month, it's over, right? And now we're literally hundreds of players. We're struggling to get we're struggling to get to just even 10,000, even just 10% of what they had, and we can't even get there. So yeah, the game is over. Again, there's no way Fragpunk is going to survive for a while. It is in another country, so maybe that's cheaper overhead cost. But man, again, this was a free to play game. I also think too, yeah, a high guard I mentioned. I also think of well, I can't find it here. I don't think it was actually released for Steam, but it was 2XKO. This was another game that was free to play. It was basically like a side scroller fighter game. And again, it was all about the cosmetics. I covered it a little bit, and they're already having layoffs and having some issues, and there's just not enough money in it. And yeah, live service really has to get some stuff figured out here. We're getting to a point now where it's like spending a massive budget is not going to draw the players in. Saying that you've made Halo before, or that you have devs from Titanfall, again, that gimmick is up to. And the game really needs to the budget needs to fit your audience. That's one, that's what this shows. But then two, you actually need to stay true to the franchise, which is, it looked like it did. But you get into the meat of the game, and again, it's just like, man, you're just trend chasing more stuff and pushing the live service. And it's the same with Call of Duty. Call of Duty used to be amazing. It used to be about the stories and the characters. But again, we're never going to have another Captain Price. We're never going to have another Call of Duty 4. Like, we're never going to have another Black Ops 1 and 2 or World at War. Those games were so good and so fun. Or like Battlefield 3. Dang. Or Battlefield 4. Like, the era of really fun multiplayer games has just been choked out to death and just focused on this dopamine hit of just getting you to just spend more money. And again, people make the argument that, well, don't buy it then, it doesn't affect you. Yes, it does. Because if I'm playing the game and the whole game is catered and built around the live service model to get me to see that I can spend more stuff, buy more stuff, then I like and is catered to the whole experience, withholding different content or multiple content again to get me to pay for it or to be able to dish stuff out on a more consistent basis. Again, consistent content is more important than actually wholesome content. And we don't really have a lot of wholesome live service games. When we do, they make money. Let's go through them again. Arc Raiders, Slay the Spire, Helldivers, they make their money. The players can see what's being built, and they're not going to be fooled anymore on what's going on. And I think live service as it is maturing. And again, the games like the ones that I just showed, they were built on smaller budgets. They're going to be making the money. And again, they're actually building a game with a addition of a store. That's what it feels like. And then again, like I called this back at the end of or beginning of 25 was that players were going to be focusing more on single player games. And boy, that is definitely way more true now than it was. And it's been a pretty quick turnover. And the reason why I bring all of this up is now that all of the big or at least a lot of companies have built off of the trend of live service, and maybe they've been successful for a while, but now that everything is matured, people don't have a lot of money. The economy, regardless of where you are in the world, is horrible right now in most cases. Well, what are you going to do now? You've built your entire business model, your entire studio and publishing and everything off of the money that you made from live service, and now the spigot is turned off. And so this is why we're seeing the live service crash. And two, your game can't be mediocre anymore. This is why games that are a 7 or an 8 out of 10 still don't necessarily make a ton of sales. When the game is really amazing, being innovative, or having a really good budget, you don't have to worry about that. I think of Expedition 33, that won Game of the Year last year. The devs said that it cost them less than $10 million. They had like 34 devs in total with a little bit of contracting or some contracting. And yeah, they had a game that was Game of the Year. And then, too, developers and publishers like Square Enix were saying, well, people don't really want to play turn based games anymore, so we don't make them. And then they made a turn based game that's actually innovative and interactive, and people love it. And there's characters in the game that people can appreciate. There's story there. There's a whole gripping thing at the very beginning of the story that you get to be a part of. And then on top of that, the game actually runs pretty well in Unreal Engine 5, which again is not a common thing in the industry. So yeah, the excuses of that making video games is hard, that we have to spend all of this money, that we have to focus on live service, that spending the money, like we have to spend so much, or like we can't make these types of games anymore. It doesn't hold water. The players see what's happening. And this is a really big issue too for console companies. Maybe I should make another video on this again too. But like console companies and the developers that primarily make console games, well, consoles are dying because the value isn't there anymore. And it hasn't been there even before the price hikes on the consoles or on the services or whatever. Yeah, people are tired of being taken for a ride and actually provided pretty much nothing. And there's a lot of other stuff too that I didn't talk about, but I think the video's gone on long enough. I think I've made my point. And I don't think, too, it's not just my view or your view, it's that the masses are deciding now that live service has run its course. And that unless the game is really amazing or really fun or really built for an audience, like Crimson Desert, again, it's not built for everybody, or like Kingdom Come Deliverance, again, it's not built for everybody. But for the audience that it is built for, they love the game and they're willing to spend money on it. And again, we can have 4 million copies sold, or we can have basically 1.2, 1.3 million copies sold. This game is, probably over $200 million just for the budget. And this game is about 125 million. And they've already made their money back. And Marathon looks like Bungie's going to collapse because they're having the same problem with Destiny 2. And again, these studios and these corporate suits, these C-suite executives, man, they are just pushing live service to the brink. They are maximizing the engine as hard as they can, having the highest revs possible. Well, if you know anything about engines, you don't want to keep them at high revs for too long because they're not made to run that way. And so when you're maximizing output, your engine eventually blows up. You eventually destroy your engine, and then you have nothing, right? And I think that's literally what's happening. And then in the same time, we're having economic stress. And so people they literally can't spend like they did. And so they're having to be choosy. So they're buying Helldivers. They're buying Slay the Spire. They're buying Resident Evil Requiem and Crimson Desert because again, these games actually are providing an experience that they want. Again, the masses will decide. This is not some the chuds freaking banding together and making this big campaign on X and Facebook and YouTube. No, if the game is good, it's going to sell. And I always think in an open market that the product should sell itself. It should be made aware of what the game is. Now, I have some marketing reservations and even some distaste for how they marketed Crimson Desert. But again, overall, the game sells itself and the numbers show that. And I think the days of making easy money in gaming is over. Really over. Because if we're not careful, well, and maybe we're experiencing it already. I believe we are to an extent of that. The crash is already happening. Okay, we've been having layoffs since October of 2022. It started with Q&A people testing the games, and, well, it's just gotten way worse since then. And the quality in a lot of cases has gotten worse for a lot of publishers and developers, and a lot of studios are having to be sold, being closed, canceled projects, canceled games. The servers being pulled quicker than normal, the game now no longer being exclusive, but now going everywhere else. Guys, all of these that I just mentioned, it's not that the company wants to do these. It's that the companies have to do these. Because while they've made record profits, they're not, or excuse me, record revenues, they're not making record profits in most cases. Maybe their profits are still good, but they're not record. And for some of these companies, the profits are actually shrinking. So again, they're making record revenue, but it also costs a heck of a lot more to actually do what they're doing. And the profit is not necessarily there for a lot of these. Because again, they're not going to sell if they think they can maintain or even make more money off of something. This is why Ubisoft has had cash injections from Tencent. This is why Warner Brothers, in its entirety, actually is having to be sold to Paramount. The other thing too is EA is also being sold to basically Saudi Arabia. They're going to have the controlling interest. So this is the way that things are going down, and I'm okay with it. I really am, because I want games to be games again. I want art to be art. I want the player to be put first, not the corporatization of, again, getting the mechanics in there, getting the dopamine hit going, and you hating the game and still wanting to play it anyway. Because I think what these companies have done now is that they've literally built the entire, their whole business strategy off of live service, but they've also built an entire audience now that is really resistant to live service, including myself. There was some stuff I used to be able to deal with. I was okay with. I would endure, but man, not anymore. I am done. They have screwed me in so many ways over the last decade. I just absolutely hate it. And the last time I actually bought a cosmetic was Ghost Recon Wildlands, which that came out in 2017. Lion Chaser and I played it back, I think, before COVID or just after COVID, and I bought it then. It was a Sam Fisher outfit. But yeah, I'm just personally me. I'm just done, man. The jig is up. I'm not willing to sacrifice my money anymore. It costs too much for what I'm getting. It's just not worth it. The value proposition is gone. And then too, I want to mention this. You really don't see that many people now saying, "Oh, I'm not a brokey. I can afford the money. I can buy the cosmetic." But you don't really see people saying that anymore, or typing that in the chat or whatever. And the reality is that live service, it's unsustainable. It can't keep going like this. So yeah, depending on what these companies do, we're going to have a crash. As I've said before, we're going to have a crash on one particular side of the gaming industry, and the other side will pick up the slack. So with that, folks, thanks for tuning in. You can always follow me at Gaming Garbage 22 if I've earned it. Go ahead and keep the vid in the algo any way you'd like. All of the ways if you're willing to take the time to do that. I appreciate it all. Thank you very much. You can also follow me over at Twitch if you'd like. Don't turn on the when I can, very rarely at this point, stream games. You can follow me over there. I still want to continue with Dead Space, but boy, it's just been too busy, and then there's a lot of stuff too that I want to talk about, and I enjoy doing this. So, but anyway, share your stories down below. What do you think about all this? Are you excited still for live service? What is your favorite game? What have you absolutely loathe in the industry right now? Share it all down below, because yeah, I will respond to it. I actually enjoy reading what you guys are saying. So even if it's not that enjoyable to read, that's totally okay. But with that, folks, thanks for tuning in. I'll see you guys on the next one.